YouTuber turned boxer Jake the Problem Child Paul has once more found himself in the midst of drama as he gears up for his fight against the former UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley this Saturday. The upcoming fight. With only a couple days left to what many predict will be the biggest pay-per-view of the year, things are starting to heat up between the two fighters. The two have even agreed to a bet where the loser has to get a tattoo declaring their love for the winner, a bet that Paul is determined to go through with. "I have a tattoo artist coming to the fight," he said, who he fully plans to send to Tyron's locker room if he wins the fight. Despite not being a boxer, Tyron has had considerable experience fighting in the UFC. Once regarded as one of the greatest welterweight champions in the history of the UFC, Tyron has been on a losing streak in his last 4 fights. With Floyd Mayweather reportedly helping him train for this fight, Tyron will be the toughest of Jake's opponents so far. Jake hopes to continue his 3-fight winning streak following his win against Ben Askren in April and wants to continue to take on tougher opponents in the future. Friend turned foe, Jorge Masvidal. Given the hype around the upcoming fight, many, including the professional UFC mixed martial arts fighter Jorge Masvidal, have rushed to take sides. "Woodley's gonna knock him out," Masvidal said in a recent interview with MMA Hour. This came as a bit of a surprise as just a few months ago Paul was training with Masvidal for his fight against the former professional MMA fighter Ben Askren. But apparently this wasn't really a surprise for Jake, who said in a Combat Culture interview, "Tyron and Jorge have the same manager and the guy's kind of an airhead, and that he's going to side with his boy." Paul also called Jorge out for finally showing his true colors after acting like he was his friend. Masvidal took to Twitter and responded, "I guess this means you'll stop hitting me up now on social media to hang out and train. Don't worry about me, you've got a handful of problems coming your way." The problem child, however, wasn't going to sit back. Jake Paul posted a series of stories on his Instagram where he showed that he doesn't even follow Masvidal back on Instagram, which is far from his claims of Jake hitting up to hang out and train. He also posted a picture of Masvidal knocked out with the caption, "Hopefully Daddy Dana lets me fight Jake now," implying that Masvidal is using this as an opportunity to get a fight with Jake. Maybe Masvidal is Paul's next opponent after his match against Woodley. That seems very likely, as Jake further said in his interview, "Maybe Jorge's next, to be honest. After I take out this guy, he can step right up," and that he would love to fight Masvidal. Rumors of rigging. However, many seem to think the fight with Woodley is rigged from the start. UFC star Colby Covington seems to think that Woodley is going to throw the fight because he's broke and needs the money. Covington thinks that his former rival is taking the kind of fights that fighters usually take at the end of their careers. Tommy Fury also seems to think the fight is rigged. The 22-year-old Love Island star seems to think that Jake Paul is very cunning and that he wouldn't pick anyone to fight that could beat him. He thinks that the two have made a deal where, although Tyron is going to make it look good, it's a guaranteed win for Paul. Whatever the case, we know that Jake Paul isn't new to controversies of this sort. Similar rumors surrounded his previous fight against Ben Askren, where many speculated that Jake Paul had cut a deal with Askren. But that's not all. Paul has also been accused of using drugs to enhance his performance to make up for what he lacks by Faraz Zahabi, a UFC MMA coach. Paul, however, was quick to snub these accusations, reminding everyone that now he is a professional boxer, he gets drug tested regularly. He seems to think they're running out of things to say about him and it's clout. Jake going after a UFC president. Whatever the case, Jake is out to show that these UFC champions can't really go at it and that they can't compete on his level. Jake hasn't been shy in his criticism of the UFC, even calling out UFC President Dana White for underpaying and exploiting his fighters. The two have had an ongoing feud for months, exchanging blows over social media and in their interviews. Dana even threatened legal action against Paul if he continued to meddle with UFC fighters under contract. Jake believes that Dana White hates him for raising his voice against fighter pay in the UFC. "I'm hurting his pockets and he doesn't like that," Paul said in an SBN interview. UFC fighters losing to an inexperienced boxer is definitely not a good look for the company either. Jake Paul even claimed that he has been working on improving fighter rights. "I've thought about creating a fighters union and there have been talks about it," he revealed in an interview following his continued activism on social media. A truce between the two seems unlikely, as Paul seems to think that this feud will end with him running into Dana at a club in Vegas and knocking him out. The UFC definitely has had trouble with the fighters showing discontent over their pay in the past, with fighters leaving the UFC to find better paying opportunities. Jake seems to think this is due to Dana White taking the biggest share from the UFC revenues. Villain or hero? Although many hate Paul because of his past, things seem to be changing in the boxing scene. Paul thinks that there's a lot of love for him and that it is easy to focus on the negatives. He added that the greatest boxer alive, Mike Tyson, is a big fan of his and has told him multiple times that this whole moment has saved the sport of boxing and that everyone should be thanking him. Maybe they don't love, but at least they respect it, Paul said about boxing fans, who he thinks are starting to see what he is doing for the sport. Perhaps this is Jake's opportunity to become the hero for a change. However, Dana White is not happy about being made out to be the villain. Rashad Evans who? Jake Paul seemed to struggle to remember Rashad Evans when asked whether former UFC Light Heavyweight champion, who has been calling Jake out, was on his hit list. "I don't even know if I'm familiar with him. Was he a welterweight?" He added that he does not see a fight between the two happening. The problem child seems to think that he's too old for him to fight and that it does not make sense to have a fight between the two. two. Paul says he wants to increase his level after each fight, working his way up to facing tougher opponents. KSI rooting for Jake Paul? The UK YouTuber, whom Jake Paul challenged to a boxing match back in January, surprisingly may be rooting for Paul in his fight against Tyron. Although KSI postponed his fight with Paul to focus on his music, perhaps the two YouTube stars might be willing to end their beef. While talking to Harvey MSC, KSI expressed that despite him not wanting Jake to win, he has kept winning and that he should do his thing. He also predicted he's going to absolutely destroy Tyron Woodley. However, Jake Paul seems to have lost interest in fighting KSI. Paul seems to think that the two are no longer matched. Jake Paul has dedicated the past year to training. KSI has been working on his music. Jake seems to think that a fight between the two at this point would barely last longer than a round. He's killing it in the music, Paul said about KSI. I have respect for him. This might be due to KSI having made music with Jake's childhood hero Lil Wayne. Either way, we think that this beef is likely to die down soon. It's personal now. Tyron demands apology. In their final press conference before the fight, things got heated once more. However, this time Tyron's mother got involved. Mama Woodley was present at the press conference. A verbal spat ensued between Jake Paul's supporters and Mama Woodley, who was very vocal in supporting her son. This upset Tyron, who threatened to sleep Paul and demanded whoever was starting beef with his mother to apologize. Who do you think is going to win the upcoming fight between Paul and Tyron? Let us know in the comments.